The Death Riders have been wreaking havoc and leaving chaos in their wake ever since the early fall in AEW. Their leader, Jon Moxley, has captured the AEW World Heavyweight Championship, and he successfully defended it against Orange Cassidy, Hangman Adam Page, Switchblade Jay White, and Powerhouse Hobbs. All challengers have fallen to the Death Riders, but we have one savior left. A man who has shown blatant disregard for his own well-being. A man who has sacrificed everything just for the opportunity to participate in the spirit of the fight. Of course, I'm talking about... No. What? No. I'm talking about... No. I'm talking about the Mad King, Eddie Kingston. And I'm here today to tell you why Eddie Kingston deserves to be the one to dethrone Jon Moxley. Hello y'all, Ben Zalance here. Before we get going today, make sure to do that follow, like, subscribe, and share gimmick. You know what it is. Now, let's get into the two main characters in our battle. In one corner, we have Eddie Kingston, the perpetual underdog, the guy who has spent over 2 decades grinding in small venues, never quite reaching that brass ring. A Mad King who embodies the old school fighting spirit of Japanese Puro style, perhaps more so than any other American at the moment. The other, Jon Moxley. Eddie's IRL best friend and occasional worst enemy, who took a similar path but found mainstream success much earlier. The ace of the world, a man who embraces a more brawling, hardcore, cutthroat style of lunacy. Both of these men scream authenticity. Both of these men are tough as nails. However, their journeys couldn't have been any more different. The main crux to our storyline is the shared history between these two. Let's start at the beginning. The year is 2011, and in a small ICW show, these two first cross paths. Kingston and Moxley immediately clicked. They shared the same blue-collar background, that same disdain for the polished corporate style of wrestling. But the paths would soon diverge. Moxley, of course, would go on to become Dean Ambrose in the WWE, achieving mainstream success as part of The Shield, while Kingston continued grinding it on the indies. Now, this isn't just a wrestling storyline that is unfolding before our eyes. This is real-life history between these two. When Kingston talks about being left behind, about watching others achieve success while he stayed in the small gyms and VFW halls, you can hear the genuine emotion in his voice. Now, we'll fast forward to 2020. AEW is in its beginning stages, and Jon Moxley has dethroned Chris Jericho as the AEW World Champion. Eddie Kingston arrives, initially challenging Cody Rhodes for the TNT Championship, but it's Kingston's confrontations with Moxley that really captivate audiences and yours truly. Their September 23rd match ends with Kingston passing out rather than giving up, a perfect representation of his character. Their I Quit match at Full Gear forces Kingston to say the words he never wanted to say. Now, in my opinion, this is where the story gets really interesting. Throughout 2021 and 2022, we see these two men oscillate between being the closest allies and the bitterest of enemies. They team up, they fight side by side, but there's always this underlying tension. Kingston, the Mad King, carries his paranoia and trust issues like battle scars, while Moxley maintains that fine line between friend and competitor. For me, the big turning point in our story happens in 2023 with the finale of the Continental Classic. Kingston, after losing his first 2 matches, goes on an incredible run. He must win every match in order to keep on qualifying and being part of this tournament. The tournament culminates at World's End, where Kingston finally achieves what had eluded him for so long: a decisive victory over Jon Moxley. This victory also makes Kingston the American Triple Crown Champion, holding the Ring of Honor World Championship, New Japan Strong Openweight Championship, and the AEW Continental Championship simultaneously. This win for Kingston was not just big on a professional level as far as him gaining a win over Jon Moxley, it was also big on a personal level for Kingston as well. This to me was his final coronation to the wider American audiences that he is not only a legitimate competitor, but he also has some legitimacy to world championships. But wrestling stories are rarely about winning matches. What makes this rivalry so compelling is the layers just beneath the surface. Both men represent different flavors of realness in an industry that is oftentimes criticized for being not as real. Kingston embodies working class authenticity, a man who has had to struggle and fight for everything he's ever gotten. Kingston's openness with his mental health issues and his internal self-doubts resonated deeply with the fans just because of how genuine it was. Now Moxley, on the other hand, he represents controlled chaos. He's evolved way past being that just unhinged character. Now he's the battle-hardened veteran who leads by example. Moxley himself does share in some real-life battles, particularly with alcohol addiction. This adds depth to a character that goes far beyond just your usual typical tough guy gimmick. Now, getting into the current storyline with the Death Riders, we've seen Jon Moxley embrace, well, to put it lightly, a darker side. It could be argued that having Kingston around, the venerable boiling pot that at any time might backfist you, might have been keeping Moxley in check, so to speak. Without Kingston, the Death Riders faction is pushing the boundaries of violence, and Eddie, watching from the sidelines, is not only becoming increasingly disturbed by his friend's actions, but quite possibly is feeling irritated that many of the same things he tried to do once before in AEW, namely lighting people on fire, has now happened without him. Most importantly, when Kingston returns, he's not just going to be fighting for championships. He's in essence going to be fighting for the soul of his best friend. This is what makes professional wrestling so beautiful when it's done right. It's not just about moves or spots or titles. It's about telling human stories that resonate with people. The story of Eddie Kingston and Jon Moxley is about friendship, betrayal, redemption, failure, and success. It's about two men who started in very different places and took two very different paths to just end up on a collision course with each other. When Kingston eventually returns to hopefully dethrone Jon Moxley, it won't just be another title win. It will be the culmination of a story that's been a decade in the making. A story about a mad king who never gave up, who kept fighting when others would have quit, and who finally proves that authenticity is the real key to success. And conversely, a story about a Death Rider, whose mission to rid the world of mediocrity has only proven how mediocre his own title run has become. Anyway, thank you for taking some time this week to hang out with me and listen to my wrestling musings. If you enjoyed this take on wrestling, make sure to check out some of my other videos. Until next time, I am Ben Zalance. Deuces.